Всем привет! I'm Marianna, this is Impression Blend, and I am back from my brief break with another movie blend talking about the latest movie releases that I had the chance to watch and whether or not I think you should spend your time on them. Now, I do realize I have some reviews to catch up on for the movies that came out over the past few weeks because I have been watching them, I just haven't been reviewing them. So I'm just going to keep throwing them into the mix in my next few videos, but let's talk about what's new and worth your attention this week, except for House of Gucci. I have not been brave enough to watch it yet. I do not have a good feeling about that movie, and my gut feeling very rarely fails me, so I'll report back about that one when I find the courage to listen to bad Italian accents for 2.5 hours. One of this year's most anticipated films for cinephiles around the world is Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza, a coming-of-age drama which happens to be his lightest and most hopeful work to date. The story is set in the 70s and revolves around a teenage boy, Gary, played by Cooper Hoffman, and Alana, a young woman in her mid-20s, played by Alana Haim, who Gary has a crush on. The film takes a slice-of-life approach to their evolving friendship, and we watch them navigate their lives, trying to figure it all out as the world around them is changing. It's a heartwarming, romantic, nostalgic journey, and what's even more important is that the chemistry between the two leads is undeniable and magnetic. Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman easily stand out as some of the most charming and memorable performances of the year. The energy between them in every scene they have together, the constant back and forth between the two, they're just so enjoyable to watch. Both of them are future movie stars, no question about it. As characters, they couldn't be more different. Gary is very determined to make the most out of whatever comes his way. He's confident, he is driven. I have never seen a 15-year-old this motivated in my entire life, but he's also a little bit naive. You just can't help liking him. Alana, on the other hand, is kind of struggling to define herself, still figuring out her path, which I guess is why she keeps hanging out with Gary and his teenage friends. In a way, Gary has his life together more than she does, but she's also a very compelling character. You can tell she's a very capable young woman, but she just hasn't found what's right for her. And I will say, this relationship felt a bit weird to me. It was throwing me off throughout the film because it's definitely presented in a romantic way, and while a 15-year-old having a crush on somebody who is older is a realistic scenario, the way the film presents this dynamic and Alana's character in particular felt a bit off. The bigger issue I had, though, was the film's structure. Licorice Pizza is told through these individual smaller stories, almost in a vignette format, as Gary and Alana navigate their strange friendship, and this type of slice-of-life storytelling is very hit or miss for me personally. Here, I can tell you about a lot of individual scenes and pieces of this film I really enjoyed, but overall, it just didn't come together for me as much as I wanted and never built up the momentum I was hoping for. As soon as I would feel we're getting somewhere, the film would move on to a new section. All that being said, I actually still had a really good time with this film. There are so many lovely scenes, fun characters, and hilarious interactions that it's impossible not to get caught up in this unique coming-of-age journey. Plus, the supporting performances are just as memorable as the leads, no matter how brief they might be, which is the case with Bradley Cooper. He barely has any screen time, but absolutely steals the scenes he's in. Same goes for Sean Penn and Benny Safdie. Their roles are a little bit bigger, but still contained to specific sections of the movie, and I guarantee you're going to remember these characters. Licorice Pizza is also a film that's very warm and nostalgic. Paul Thomas Anderson's version of the San Fernando Valley feels like a place he has a lot of affection for. It actually feels like time traveling to California in the 70s, and he sweeps you off your feet as he takes you on this adventure. It is so magical when a film can do that, and I completely understand why other people might not be as bothered by the episodic structure as I was. Getting lost in this setting with these two characters and the supporting characters, wandering around these streets and locations with them, watching what kind of trouble they're going to get themselves into next. It's enjoyable, and it's the type of authentic portrayal of a time period on screen that you just want to stay in. So in the end, while Licorice Pizza may not be as structurally cohesive and driven as I hoped, it is still so lovely and enjoyable. Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman are fantastic. The setting is beautiful. The movie is charming and pretty funny with this almost dreamlike quality to it. I would go as far as saying that this is Paul Thomas Anderson's most rewatchable film. And with all that in mind, I am giving Licorice Pizza a very strong 8 out of 10. I can easily see this one being nominated for a bunch of awards and being in a lot of people's top 10 movies of the year lists. This is currently out in theaters in limited release, but it is expanding, so keep an eye out. Now, if you're in need of a very depressing Thanksgiving movie because it's appropriate for this week, A24 has your back with The Humans, which is currently out in theaters and on Showtime. The film is based on a Tony Award-winning play by Stephen Karam, who is making his feature film directorial debut with this adaptation of his own play. This really is a good choice for those of you who love a well-written, contained family drama. There isn't much of a story to follow here. The film revolves around a family coming together for a Thanksgiving dinner, and as the evening goes on, we find out more and more about all of these people, the difficulties they're having, the conflicts and issues that exist. It features an amazing cast, so all of the performances are solid, even Amy Schumer, who I'm not the biggest fan of. It's a dramatic role, she's not trying to be funny, and she actually is really good here. But there's also Richard Jenkins, who is excellent, Beanie Feldstein, Stephen Yeun, Jane Houdyshell, who was actually in the original stage production of the play, and she is fantastic. The best thing about this film is that the family dynamics and the dialogue are very realistic. You do get that feeling like you're eavesdropping on an actual family gathering. The visuals really help with that as well. The way Stephen Karam uses the space they're in and the lighting, with a lot of the shots being along the lines of looking in through the glass or from a different room, it really adds to this effect of actively watching a family rather than being in the middle of all of the drama. Sometimes this even feels like a horror movie. There are even some jump scares in there, which it may seem that these things don't really mix well with a family drama, but it does work with the tension and with everything that eventually goes on within the setting of this film. That being said, to me, this felt like something that just works better as a play. There is a buildup of energy to a live stage performance that's pretty impossible to capture on film, and with this particular story, I felt like that's what it needed for full effect. It definitely works as a film, and Stephen Karam clearly has an eye for directing, so I hope he does more films in the future, but between being pretty bleak and eventually getting pretty obvious and repetitive, even though the drama itself is compelling, The Humans just didn't quite click for me as much as I hoped. I don't even have much more to say about this film because it's a pretty simple movie to describe, and I don't think you need to know that much about it to understand whether this is something that's for you or not. Because all of the good stuff has to do with the details and the wonderful performances, I'm just going to leave it at this. I wish this movie did it for me as much as something like Krisha or like Mass earlier this year, which The Humans actually does some individual things better than Mass and feels more polished. But in the end, even though it was good, and I do love a good contained drama, I just wanted more from it, so I'm going with a 7 out of 10 for The Humans, and I really do hope that Stephen Karam. 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 Finally, if you missed Spencer in theaters earlier this month, you can now watch it on VOD, and I definitely recommend you do, not just because this film is generally something that's worth your attention, but also because this is definitely going to be a big awards contender. That being said, this is not going to be a 100% glowing review because I did have a couple of issues with this film, but we'll get there. I'm sure you've heard that Kristen Stewart is probably getting a Best Actress Oscar for this movie. That has been the buzz ever since Spencer premiered at the Venice Film Festival earlier this year, and it is absolutely well-deserved. Directed by Pablo Larraín, Spencer is the imagined version of what could have happened over the course of 3 days during the Christmas holidays of 1991 as Princess Diana joined the royal family for the celebration. Do not expect this to be a traditional biopic or for the film to hold your hand through the events of Diana's life. Instead, this is more of a spiritual snapshot of Diana during a certain period of her life. The film is a character study that focuses on her mental state and things she's been struggling with ever since she became a part of the royal family, but it isn't based on any specific account. As the opening puts it, this is a fable from a true tragedy. It feels almost like a psychological horror drama, and in a way, it's a little bit of a ghost story. The eeriness of the visuals certainly gives that impression, and while there may or may not be an actual ghost involved, it's also clear that Diana herself feels like a ghost of someone she once was. If you've seen Pablo Larraín's Jackie, which I love and highly recommend, I actually prefer it to Spencer, which may or may not be a hot take, but Spencer is pretty easy to compare to that film from the perspective of the approach to a biopic. If you're interested in a comprehensive look at Diana's life, you are not going to find it here. Instead, the film aims to let you know what life felt like for her at its most unbearable and why she ended up separating from and eventually divorcing Prince Charles. Now, I already mentioned that this is a character-driven film, and while this may seem like an obvious observation to make, there are films that we generally consider character-driven, and then there are films like Spencer where the performance and the lead character are the film. Yes, it has other things going for it. It's beautifully shot. The costumes are gorgeous, and there technically are other characters in it, but none of them are really developed. Most of them are glorified background, and all of this just serves to frame Diana and what she's going through. This is actually one of my issues with the movie. I get why it's done this way and that it conveys how she felt in this environment, but you'd think she's mainly surrounded by alien duplicates of people from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is just unfortunate from the writing standpoint. The other thing about the writing is how heavy-handed it can be with its metaphors and certain dialogue choices. I'm purposefully being vague here because since this isn't really plot-driven, if I start giving away the specifics, there won't be much left for you to experience. For some movies, occasional heavy-handedness works, and it does work here as well, occasionally, but for my taste, there was just way too much of it. There really isn't much room left for nuance when it comes to Diana herself or the themes of the film. I will even go as far as saying that this almost felt exploitative of what we can perceive as a low point in her life and mental state. There was much more to Diana than we see here. This is something that's obvious from her interviews and what we know about her life supported by her own words, and yet the film is exclusively interested in her being on the verge of a breakdown or actively having a breakdown. But at the same time, Spencer is very effective in achieving what it sets out to do. Everything feels very claustrophobic, and the entire film, you watch Diana struggle to break free and rebel in any way she can, even if it's just being late or wearing the wrong dress. You really get how powerless she feels, how much she sees herself as a pawn who must fulfill a certain role with all of the weight of tradition and expectations. She is constantly watched, not just by paparazzi, but also by staff and family to make sure she's doing what she's supposed to do. It's incredibly sad and tragic, overwhelmingly so, with the only brighter moments being a few scenes with her children. And Kristen Stewart gives it her all. I am just so glad that more and more people are discovering her as a very talented actress, and I'm really hoping that she will finally no longer be defined by Twilight. I have loved her performances for years now, and this is definitely a very important one. I really don't think she disappears into this role in a way that makes you forget you're watching Kristen Stewart necessarily, but she does nail the personality and mental state, and this is a portrayal that feels authentic and vulnerable. I have no idea how an actress can continuously be in this dark of a place day after day for as long as they've shot this film and not lose her mind, because when you watch this, it's obvious that she really internalized this pain and state of mind. So I respect the hell out of this performance and the work she put in, and if she wins an Oscar for this, I think it will be very well deserved. Overall, I really appreciated a lot about this film, even though it did eventually begin to feel repetitive, and I wish the writing was stronger and more nuanced. It's very effective though when it comes to what it's going for, and the lead performance truly makes it a must-watch. For me, this is a solid 8 out of 10, and presenting a biopic as this imagined dramatic psychological thriller was a very interesting approach to take, and I do hope we keep getting these non-traditional biopics in the future. But let me know what you have been watching this weekend. Have you seen any of these films? Are you looking forward to them? Let's talk in the comments below. As always, a big thank you to all of my patrons for supporting me on Patreon, with an extra special thank you to the patrons whose names are on the screen right now, and of course a thank you to everyone who made it to the end of this video. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Всем пока!